Dynamite. How about those Blue Jays as Toronto completes a sweep of the Yankees to sit alone in first in the American League East? We'll gush about it. Plus, some big news coming from the NHL and a big week in the UFC wraps up, along with some great talk about the NXT show that we had and AEW Dynamite. There's a lot to get into, so let's do it. Couch Potato Diary Live starts right now. Welcome everyone to Couch Potato Diary. Happy Friday. My name is Peter Klein. Thank you very much for hanging out today. As always, we're presented by Sea of Dead. Check out seaofdead403.ca for that great Calgary swag. This right here. Great Calgary swag. Some Stampede Wrestling stuff. It's Stampede time. Who doesn't want to rock a Stampede Wrestling shirt? You can order it and you can get it very, very quickly. I promise you that. So head over to seaofdead403.ca for the great Calgary swag. Also, we are fueled by Swift Energy. Head over to swiftenergy.gg. Use that code PKPrimetime for the 25% off. Like I said, it's Stampede time. So, got to get that energy going. Got to get those boosts. So Swift Energy gonna help you out with that. Apologies that we didn't have a video game stream yesterday. Still dealing with some technical issues, and normally I can at least come close to figuring them out. Haven't yet. So working on that. But this one seems to be going fine. As always, we are on a few different spots. So if you, wherever you are watching, notice anything wrong, laggy, or anything like that, let me know in the stream. I don't have a lot of technical acumen to fix it right away, but I will at least know that something is wrong and be able to panic about it. So, like I said, we got a lot coming up on this show. I am so excited to be talking about the Toronto Blue Jays and how well they are doing. But if you have thoughts on anything going on in sports that we aren't necessarily talking about at that moment, it is fine. Just put it in the chat and we will certainly get to it. Just, sometimes you want to pop in. We're not talking about the exact thing you want to be talking about at that exact time. I don't mind pivoting, not even a little bit. So throw all your thoughts into the chat, but let's start with some baseball. The Toronto Blue Jays have always kind of felt like they were good, not great, but they looked great against the Yankees. So how for real is this? How seriously should we be taking it? And who cares? Should we just be enjoying it? I think if nothing else, it is time to talk a little bit more seriously about the Toronto Blue Jays after their series sweep of the New York Yankees. So, the Toronto Blue Jays are now first place in the American League East. It is the first time that they have been in first place this late into the season since 2016. This is the most wins they have had through this many games since 1993. So, things are going well, is basically what I'm trying to tell you with this. That this team is doing a whole lot right. And this series is a great chance to really just celebrate what is happening here. Because, are there holes you can poke into things? Absolutely there are. But Blue Jays fans, we know, you can see, and look, I'm not hiding it. You got the where are we? Hat in the background there. This is the team I follow, right? And so there is obviously a lot of frustration that comes with that. And there's been a lot of disappointment in most of our lifetimes watching the Blue Jays. So embrace this. This was such an amazing time to be a Blue Jays fan and to be able to time it up almost perfectly where you are getting that lull in hockey and everything. And now, hey, here come the Yankees. And more importantly, here come the Blue Jays. To do this while the entire nation is basically ready to watch is a really, really great thing for just the popularity of this team, for the excitement level around this team, and all of that. As someone who does do a lot of the mainstream media sports talking, and on this podcast as well, it is a lot more fun when the Blue Jays are fun this time of year, and it really opens things up. You think about where this team was 365 days ago. We were getting ready for a Blue Jays sell-off at the trade deadline and just kind of hoping that maybe a couple of young pieces start to click a little bit. But I do think that was something that was able to set a foundation for this team because it gave a lot of opportunities to guys like Will Wagner, guys more importantly like Addison Barger and Ernie Clement, and just more consistent opportunities for these players. And look, I will be the first to admit I was not one who was overly enthused about all of this, and I was not one who was going to assume that, okay, well, they had a good couple of weeks against Seattle and whatever, but it'll calm down, and it hasn't really. And I think that stretch last year, painful as it was a time for Barger to understand that there were adjustments that needed to be made. It was a time for Ernie Clement to kind of figure out what he was doing as a hitter, and a time for Will Wagner to get a few more reps as a big league hitter and get some opportunities in there as well, and just allowed the rest of this team to see like, okay, pressure is off. What's working and what isn't. And I think that type of a thing is valuable. I'm not saying that you should just alternate wins, or good year, bad year, good year, bad year, because you want to see, okay, what is really working? You tend to just want to figure out what's working and have it work. But the Blue Jays, I think, utilized last year to the best of their capabilities and have set themselves up in a very strong way for 2025 now. And the cool thing about everything that the Jays are doing at this particular time is this 4-game sweep happens without Bo Bichette in the lineup. And they have a team that is in first place while Dalton Varsho, who was their best player for a little bit, has been injured. And they have got, to be perfectly frank, injury or not, nothing from their biggest free agent acquisition, Anthony Santander, this season. And so for them to be able to have these types of performances while you are missing one of your more consistent hitters, while you are missing a guy who turned into a bit of a spark plug for your team this season, and a guy who was supposed to be a big difference maker in the middle of your lineup, is a really, really good thing. And if nothing else, it allows you to not rush these guys back and let them fully get set up. Give Bo Bichette an extra couple of days in July, because apparently September is going to mean something now for this team. So this is a fantastic stretch for the Blue Jays. The one thing I would say is not to get negative about it at all, but do not treat that series like it was the World Series. That was an excellent sweep. It is the first time they've done that to the Yankees in 4 games in franchise history. Embrace it, enjoy it, do all of those things. Do not waste it, because now you have a series against the Angels, and the last time you had a series against the Angels, coming off of what was a pretty good series, you wasted it, and it was right back down to where you were before. This is a time to keep that foot on the gas and just keep rolling. This is not a good Angels baseball team that the Blue Jays are facing, and they're probably not going to face another good team between now and the All-Star break. So again, embrace this, but build off of it. Don't let this be the okay, well, yeah, that was great. This shouldn't be the high point. This is the building point. This is not the peak of what you want this season to be for the Toronto Blue Jays. And I think one way you can help that is making a trade. I think that this team has shown that they deserve the investment of a big-time move from this front office. Now, it is a little bit tricky when you do that, because obviously things are going well for this baseball team at this point. And one of the things that was talked about, I thought Blake Murphy made an excellent point when he was chatting with Dan Shulman on Blue Jays Talk the other day, saying like right now, like you have your very good players at the top, and Springer is playing at a very good player level, as is Vlad Guerrero Jr., but one thing that you really have is just no bad players in your lineup. Everyone is contributing in their own way. And so to be able to rely on that has been very, very helpful for this team, but they are still not perfect. And so you do have to find a way to improve this while not upsetting the balance. And we have seen this front office overcorrect on things at times, right? You get a defensive blunder in center field that is kind of the big inciting moment of blowing an 8-1 lead against the Seattle Mariners. So you overcompensate and go out and address defense by trading Lourdes Gurriel Jr. and Gabby Moreno for Dalton Varsho. And now all of a sudden you've gone 3 years and you haven't been able to hit a thing. So don't just say, okay, yeah, things are going great, but we need a starter. Okay, here's 5 guys, and there's Sandy Alcantara. It doesn't need to be that, but this team does need to, I think, really take advantage of the opportunity that is here. And I think really kind of double down on what you have and show that locker room, look, we believe what's happening here. We trust you guys, and we are going to make a push to be competitive this season and really make that type of a charge here. And I think that is, it's something that, like, being able to listen in podcasts and also being able to interview a couple of people who were involved in the 2015 Blue Jays. When they went out and acquired Troy Tulowitzki and then David Price, they basically just didn't lose from that point on. And if you remember at the time of the Tulo trade, the Blue Jays were below 500, I think. Like they were a 40-41 team, if I'm not mistaken, when the Reyes trade gets made after a couple of rough defensive outings from him. Tulo comes in and then they acquire David Price, and all of a sudden this team just has this belief like, look, we're really good, so let's go do this thing. And I think that this team deserves that type of a move. And I don't know if it is whatever the 2025 version of Tulo and David Price is, but I think they do deserve that type of a boost and that type of an investment from the front office, because not only is this team playing well, but everything is set up in a way that I don't know if it will be from here on in. The Baltimore Orioles, I think, really soundly screwed up this offseason. But you look at the talent they have, they're not going to be this bad again. At least I wouldn't be betting on it. The Boston Red Sox, it seems like clubhouse-wise, maybe there was a little addition by subtraction going on with the Devers thing, and I get that they have been a bit more about flying those financial responsibility banners and everything like that, but they're a team that is going to have mucho dinero to spend in the offseason. So I would assume that we are going to see better versions of the Red Sox going forward. The Rays aren't going to be playing in a minor league ballpark for the rest of time, and the Yankees are going to have Garrett Cole back next year, and will probably address the offense in maybe a more meaningful way as early as this month. So take advantage of the opportunity while you have it, because you can go through the rest of the American League East and say, look, none of these teams are going to be this vulnerable again. This is the Blue Jays' opportunity to really try to take advantage. I think that, again, I have kind of been saying for a bit that I want Luis Robert, and I understand it is not going well for him in Chicago, but I think, like, who would it be going well there for? But you do have to kind of look at, okay, well now, I'm not saying, well, we can't go out and get a guy who a couple years ago looked like one of the best players in baseball because we have Miles Straw, and we can't go get an all-star in Ryan McMahon because we have Will Wagner hitting 200 at third base. But when everyone's healthy, Ernie Clement over at third base. I do think, though, there are still improvements that can be made to this lineup and to this roster. I think while it was great having the production of Davis Schneider the last couple of days, I think that a real power-hitting right-handed bat off the bench is a really important thing for how lefty-dominant this lineup can be at times. I think having like that real big off-the-bench pinch-hit situation guy is a very valuable thing to this team. I do think that more starting pitching depth is certainly required, and if you wanted to get that on the high end, I wouldn't mind. And this bullpen needs help. That would probably be the first place you would start, is that the bullpen really seriously needs some help back there. So I think you can go like offense, starting, bullpen. All three phases need a little bit of a boost right now, but it does not seem like it is like the major surgery that might have been needed a little bit ago. So I think that this is a time for the Blue Jays to really take advantage of an amazing opportunity and take advantage of the good vibes you have going on in that clubhouse right now. We're going to talk about one part of the Blue Jays that doesn't get enough credit here in just a second, but I do want to ask if you could share this episode wherever you are viewing it right now or listening to it. Just hit that share button. Help spread the word of Couch Potato Diary. Share it with your friends and a couple people you don't like, just to throw them off. That would really help grow this thing as we're trying to continue what's been a pretty good progression here over the last little month at Couch Potato Diary. So one part of this Blue Jays team that doesn't get enough credit, I think, in this run is the managing of John Schneider. He has been, I think, everything this team would need going into this season. And he has taken a lot of flack for certain decisions that have been made. I thought that the organization threw him under the bus after the decision against the Twins, pulling Barrios, also pulling Gausman the year before. And, manager's thing. I thought it was very cowardly of the front office when everyone knows that this is now how organizations are structured, and it is analytics departments and everything like that. And John Schneider, I think, kind of wore a lot of those and is now coaching his ass off. And I still think that there is a bit of a collaboration going, but I don't think it's the analytics department that's doing a whole lot of it, because any analytics department that would suggest sacrifice bunts and things like that would be shot into the sun. Like, that's just not how that world operates. And so I think the Jays are finding a good kind of natural spot now with analytics and traditional baseball thinking. And they've shown the ability to pivot. There was a little bit in a Blue Jays group chat. There was a little bit of frustration when Vlad was moved up to hit number 2. The analytics side of this is you actually want your best hitter in that number 2 slot because he is only hitting number 2 once in a game. After that, everything is all over the place, right? And so as the number 2 hitter, you at least have an opportunity in the first inning with him to have a runner on and him to be able to drive a run in. But then after that, you position him in a way where you are going to presumably get extra at-bats out of him as the season goes on because he is hitting higher up in the lineup, right? Like, that's just how lineups work. So you want your best hitter in that 2 hole because he is going to get even like 70 or 80 extra at-bats, you would presume, than the number 3 guy just as the season rolls along. And so you're trying to kind of match it up and maximize it that way. But he wasn't hitting very well in that spot. He was hitting much better in the 3 hole. So they just moved him and put him back, and it has been very, very effective. And they have used hit and run and been aggressive on the bases and been using sack bunts. And that is not a strategy that I celebrate, but it has been working for this team. And so I think Schneider has done just unbelievable work in finding where everyone's strengths are, where everyone is comfortable, and how to maximize them that way. I think he has played the platoons really well on the offensive side. I think he has put everyone in a position in the order to kind of maximize what they can do. And no, like, you're not going to, okay, first and second, nobody out, up comes Alejandro Kirk, we're going to sack bunt this guy. No, it's not just that, but when it gets down to the bottom of the lineup and all of a sudden it's Leo Jimenez who's having trouble hitting his weight, then yeah, we're going to sack bunt in that spot, and we're going to bring Lucas up and he's going to take advantage, and then Springer really is going to take advantage. I think that he has done a very good job of recognizing the strengths and weaknesses of everyone in this lineup and putting them in the optimal spot to succeed. I think he's done great with that, and the bullpen and the rotation, he has been a wizard, I think, all year long. And if you are a longtime consumer of my content, you will know that Pete Walker is celebrated on Couch Potato Diary. I think that he is the best pitching coach in baseball with what they've been able to get out of a number of different guys over the years, and I think that is something that the Blue Jays should try to maximize a little bit more. But I think the combination of now Schneider and Pete Walker has really helped to figure out where all these pieces fit. Like, they have basically, until the last couple of weeks, they have had 4 starting pitchers, you know? Like, they were able to get some good innings out of different guys at different points, but for all intents and purposes, that 5th spot in the rotation every time around has been a bullpen game. And sometimes they had to overuse guys, and that has led to a few problems. But for the most part, Schneider, I think, has done a very good job of trusting his pitchers to get out of some jams. That is the spot where I think he maybe needs to pull back just a little bit. I think he trusts some of his starters a little bit too much. But even the game the other day, like Bassett, trying to work through some things, it just wasn't happening. Maybe you could have pulled him a batter or 2 earlier, but there was a couple of innings where if you would have done that, maybe you're set up in a bad spot and he's able to battle through it. I think that he has done a good job of kind of recognizing that and knowing what buttons to push when. I thought it was a little bit too much for Jimmy Garcia and for Hoffman and for all of those guys throughout the lineup or in that bullpen early on in the year. But those were the types of performances they needed at that time. And now there have been a couple of shaky performances, but I think being able to manage the bullpen on the 4 days that you have an actual starter and then being able to maximize it when there is a bullpen day, I think he's done a fantastic job with that. So I think John Schneider deserves a lot of credit. Austin Scott in the YouTube chat was at the game last night. Place was electric. That is another part of all of this. Like, the Blue Jays, in the entire time that I was growing up, the Blue Jays weren't very good. And so you watch, like, the anniversary of Delgado hitting the 4 home runs to get to 300 was just the other day. And so I saw the clip, and there are full sections of the Rogers Center that are empty in the era where the diamond looked like they just spray painted on concrete to get out there. And so I think Blue Jays fans kind of got this reputation of, it's a hockey city, whatever. But like 2015 maybe went overboard with throwing a few things on the field, but I think that really reminded people that this can be a very passionate fan base, and the Rogers Center can be an electric place. And now this is the first time that they are really good with the improvements that have been made to the atmosphere of that ballpark and just the overall aesthetic as well. And so to give this fan base now something a little prettier to cheer in, I think that is really going to drive that up. But yeah, Austin, the electricity in that place when it is really going is second to none. And I think a few more people are going to recognize that. Like I lived in Toronto for a couple of years. It is not a couple of years that a lot of people are going to remember fondly for the Blue Jays, although I was there when Bautista hit 50. But even just being there for a couple of Yankee games and being there when AJ Burnett came back to face the Blue Jays and it was him against Roy Halladay and just the buzz in the building there and like different opening days and everything like that, it is just different than almost any other sporting atmosphere when you get the ballpark that is buzzing in that way. So a credit to the Jays fans who were all over it and helping get that Blue Jays team across the finish line in a couple of those games, including Austin, who deserves some credit for being a part of the electric atmosphere. And hopefully it only gets better as the season rolls along. So look, things are going great, and I'm not even cautiously optimistic anymore. I am optimistic, and I am like, let's go. Let's video game this and just start like really trying to capitalize on what is a fantastic baseball team right now. That is going to do it for the Blue Jays portion of this. But if you want to keep the Blue Jays conversation going, keep throwing some stuff in the chat, and we can bounce back to it a little bit later on. But we are going to pivot to the National Hockey League here in just a second. But if you did miss anything from today's stream, whether it is now or if you have to leave a little bit early, understood. You can get all these in podcast form over on Spotify. You can also get it over on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcast. Just search Couch Potato Diary. We move now to the world of hockey. The last real big name on the free agent board has found a home out east, and the Carolina Hurricanes are looking like they could be a real contender. What about the Jets? What about anybody else? Going to be a tough offseason now the rest of the way, and teams are going to have to get creative. But Ehlers to Carolina feels like a home run. Let's talk about it. So one of the last big names on the board for free agents in the NHL is on his way to Carolina, as Nick Ehlers has signed a 6-year deal worth $8.5 million a season. There's a few different layers to this. Let's start with the Carolina aspect of it. I love it for them. They needed to be able to generate more offense. He does that. I think they needed to be able to play with a little bit more pace. Boy, does he do that. I just think he gives them quite a few boosts in some areas that they were looking for. And at this point, like, they are obviously geared up for the playoffs. I think they are so clearly the best team in their division. And I could understand if, given the lack of success in the conference finals and how far away they felt from the Panthers, if they just wanted to, okay, this ain't our time, let's pivot and go a different direction. I think you could understand that, but I do like that they have just been like, you know what? We just kind of feel like being good again, so we're going to be a good hockey team again. I love that for them. Really like that they are making that type of a push. And while Ehlers doesn't necessarily feel like a Rod Brindamore type of a guy, I do think that he helps fill in a few different gaps that this team was missing offensively. And now you look at what they have as a forward unit, and it is one of the best top nines in the National Hockey League. Daily Faceoff on their depth chart board thing has Ehlers on the left side with Aho and Jarvis. That would be an amazing spot for him, and we'll talk about that in a second. But there are a couple of different spots that you can kind of play around with in growing this hockey team and trying to get a little bit more offense out of a team that was kind of known for just a smothering defensive style. But I think that they kind of learned from Florida here too, where you can have that good, strong defensive base, but the second that the other team makes a bit of a boo-boo, whatever that may be, jump on the puck, rush it up the ice. And Ehlers is so good at that with the speed that he can play with, the offensive skill that he has. Maybe he is not locked down, shut down type of a guy, but the second the opposition turns that puck over or anything, it needs to be rushing up and it needs to be an opportunity. Carolina tried to do that against Florida in the first couple of games before they just got washed out. And they were they were successful in getting the puck out and rushing up ice, but they weren't successful in finishing. And that's where Florida really took advantage, is that the Panthers were a team that made you pay for every mistake. And I think Ehlers helps get the Hurricanes, into that spot a little bit easier and a little bit better now. So I think that this is a great move for Carolina. And they still have about $10 million in salary cap space to play with. Now, the game changers aren't there in the free agent market anymore, but if this team wants to go out and make a trade, they have all of their first round picks plus an extra one from Dallas in 2028. And there are a couple of holes that still need to be plugged, I think. For them, I wouldn't hate an upgrade at second line center. I don't know how much I would love going into a season with Kotkaniemi still as my number 2 center. Maybe not the season. I shouldn't say that. I don't know how much I would love to go into a playoff series with Florida again as Kotkaniemi being my number 2 center. So I think that is an area that they would be looking to upgrade. But I mean, get in line, right? Like, everyone is looking to upgrade that position. Maybe you want another defenseman. Like, they have a top 4 of Slavin, Walker, Condre Miller, who they just acquired, and Jalen Chatfield. That is a solid top 4. You've Gostisbehere as your 5. So, like, it is a very, very solid core and a very solid defensive team anyway, structurally. But maybe you would like a bit of a talent upgrade to push one of those guys down to a pairing with Gostisbehere. I do think goalie needs to be addressed, but Anderson has shown that he can be good enough to at least get them to the conference finals. And so the obvious replacement for him isn't out there, so I don't think they need to go selling off a bunch of assets to try to make that happen. But they're in a spot now where they can still tinker, still improve, and they have a lot of wiggle room to play with on the salary cap side of things. As far as Ehlers goes, I think this is a real win for him. I don't know if he ever really got... To say he never got a fair shake in Winnipeg feels a little dismissive, but I look at where the Jets are at, and like you had Ehlers playing with Nemestikov and Perfetti this year, and when he wasn't doing that, it was with Lowry and Appleton. Like, those are their second and third lines, but it doesn't really give him the real opportunities to fully shine. And it wasn't really working with like Scheifele and Connors or anything like that. But those lines that he was on, it felt like he needed to be a bit more of the driver. And if he is going to play with Aho and with Jarvis, that ain't happening. He is going to think, I think he is really going to thrive on this team if they put him in those positions. I think there's a hell of a hockey player in there with Nikolai Ehlers. And we've talked before, anytime I watch him play, he has a big game. It's just, I don't get as many viewings of the Jets and is that consistency. But I think getting the consistency and the opportunities now is really going to help him shine and really going to help him kind of take advantage of a whole lot of things. Look, I'm not the biggest fantasy hockey guy in the world, but this feels like it could be a really big year coming up for him. As far as what it means for Winnipeg, this one, it's a hit, but it's not totally unexpected. I think that they were prepared for this. I think the signings of Taves and Nyquist are good pivots, with Lowry being out for most of the year, and now Ehlers being out for forever as he's in Carolina. I think it's a good pivot. I've always been a fan of Nyquist. He is 35, and it was a real down year last year. But I do think that putting him, again, like put him with Nemestikov and Perfetti, I think that there is a way that you can get at least some of these 60 points back that Ehlers takes with him out the door. They have $19 million in cap space, but they still have Velarde and a couple of others to kind of figure out. They also have all their firsts, like I said. It does feel like trade is going to be the way that this team improves, or internal growth. And it does kind of seem like they have to, because this division is so good. And look, the roster is good, but with Ehlers and Lowry now basically gone, and a couple of others as well, you're trying to catch up to what last year's team was instead of making it better. But I could see the Jets kind of like a bit of a pivot where, look, we think that like regular season, we're set. We just think it kind of fell apart in the playoffs. And so by bringing in a Jonathan Taves, who has seen every situation, good or bad, having him in our locker room is going to be enough to just keep what we have going in the regular season and just have our mental clarity be the improvement that we need going into the next season. So I think that this is a really good spot for them. We got a couple other people in the chat talking about the Toronto Blue Jays, and I said, if you guys want to keep the Blue Jays conversation going, we can do that. So let's pivot and let's keep talking about the Toronto Blue Jays. It's also one of my favorite intros, so I just kind of want to keep it going. But a couple more in the YouTube chat right now. We have Texas Liberty, Hank, saying, I can see Toronto being a wild card team and everyday Mets. Nice job kicking butt. Go Jays. Yes, the Blue Jays certainly helping out the Mets. Also, like, not that we're not shedding any tears for the New York Yankees, right? Obviously. But that's a weird schedule that they have to deal with, because the 4th of July game, we're recording this at 12:45 Mountain Time here. That game starts at 1. The Blue Jays game ended last night. Was that like 8:30 Mountain Time? So 10:30 Eastern. It's not a lengthy trip back to Toronto. You do have to deal with some customs a little bit and all of that. But I think it was a really, really difficult kind of turnaround for the Yankees. I was surprised that yesterday wasn't a getaway day and that game was in the afternoon, letting the Yankees get back for the 4th of July and their afternoon game. But either way, Mets had it's been an interesting year for the Mets, kind of a little bit up and down, but this is a very, very big series for both of these teams now, this Subway Series 2.0. So I'm very intrigued as to what's going to happen in those games coming up for this one today. The Stinkies are on a 13-game no-day off streak. Oh, those poor things. Oh, the poor Yankees, whatever will they do? And look, a lot of people are going to be seeing this after the fact, and who knows what the result is. So hopefully we're not jinxing anything for the everyday Mets. But I mean, look, like this is, the Yankees have had a couple years in a row where they have had a bit of a speed wobble in June. And you look, it is a younger, bit more athletic roster, but they still have a bit old on that team. And so having the quick turnaround going into the 4th of July, having 2 weeks of no days off or anything like that, it starts to wear. And also, they're playing their worst baseball of the season at this time as well. So you're not getting any days to just like, God, can we just get away from the ballpark and just decompress and think about anything else and try to get our minds right. It is just day after day, reminder after reminder. Hey, you guys are playing pretty awful right now. You want to fix that? Didn't fix the next day. Hey, it still sucks. You guys want to deal with that? And now you have the Blue Jays and the Rays just breathing down your necks, and you could end today in 3rd place in the American League East. So yeah, things are kind of faltering around New York right now. Certainly in the Bronx anyway. So yeah, again, does not break the heart all that much to see that happening with the Bronx Bombers. As far as where the Blue Jays could go, Texas Liberty saying, I can see a wild card for Toronto. I do think that is still probably the most realistic path here. This is a Yankees team that is still very good. And you would have to assume that improvements are coming. DJ LeMahieu is not going to be their second baseman as of this time in August. I think that they are going to figure that out, probably with another third baseman, move Chisholm to second and kind of figure it out there. And so I do think that from this point on, the Yankees probably do still have a better regular season than Toronto has, but I am not overly, I don't want to say not overly concerned, but I'm not overly intimidated by the Yankees come playoff time. Their best hitter has yet to show that he can be their best hitter when it comes to the playoffs, and they have a starting rotation where one dude scares you, right? And if anything happens to the not often healthy Max Fried, then this thing goes south in a real hurry. They're putting Stroman out today as a viable starting option, as their second best guy. His ERA is 9. So there are some concerns with that. So I think that there are some real problems with the Yankees. And so I think could the Yankees catch the Blue Jays which is a fun thing to say, and still win the division? Absolutely they could. And I do still think probably the most likely scenario is Toronto is a wild card team, for sure. But I think the Jays, when you go into the playoffs with Gausman, Barrios, and Bassett as your 1, 2, 3, and like Bichette and Springer and Vladdy as just being consistent hitting options. And now Kirk apparently is that as well. Like, this is a team that is going to be the nobody wants to face them in the playoffs sort of a thing. And so that is why I just think there is going to be a chance for this team to really do some damage this year. And that's why I think you should make a real push with this roster. Like Everyday Mets is saying, Rays no home, borrowing the Stinkies spring training facility. It is like losing to their very own minor league team. That is also very funny. A little bit like, ugh, really? We're competing here? And having to, like, we did spring training here, and now we're losing to a team in our own spring training facility? What are we doing? That would be a little bit of a downer. Deeds, thanks for letting me know that Twitch is being a little twitchy. That is a little frustrating. So hopefully, I don't know. I certainly don't have the technical experience to try to get that back on track here. So hopefully it is okay. Oh yeah, look at that. Unstable is where we are at this particular time. So hopefully that gets better. It's looking okay on my end right now, but we'll see how that kind of continues to go along. So hopefully it ends up being all right. But yeah, like this team... Are they a team that is like, even though they are in first place right now, are the Blue Jays a favorite to be first in the American League East when all is said and done? I would not believe that. Now, I think that is in their range of outcomes, and I also think that that is one of the reasons why this team deserves a move or two, because this is now a possibility. No one thought it was a possibility coming into this season. We all thought that by this time, this team would be about 2 games above 500 and would be, well, we're not going to sell off these pieces now, so let's make a couple of fringe moves and just see. Now you have a proof of concept that this thing works, that this team can be a division leader past the midway point of this season. So load up, like really take advantage of this opportunity. Do what they did in 15, where you saw there was a chance to get the Yankees, and there was a real team that could really be built on with Donaldson, Bautista, Encarnacion, Russell Martin. So go out and they improve at shortstop. They get that ace, who didn't end up being a real ace in the playoffs all that much, but still, go out, get that ace. They help improve the bullpen. They help improve the top of the lineup, going out and getting Ben Revere. Like, they really made those moves to say, this is a team that can compete. Well, this is a team that can compete. So give them a couple more pieces to really compete with and really make a charge at this, because it is all right there for them right now. Everything is changing around Couch Potato Diary, kind of always. So keep in touch with the show. Follow me on social media. I am at Primetime Klein on everything. Instagram, X, TikTok, Threads, and over on Blue Sky. Okay, let's get back into the hockey conversation now, as Ehlers wasn't the only big signing in the NHL. We had a couple of other interesting ones on a couple of blue lines. So let's get back into that talk. But again, if we want to keep talking Blue Jays, I am here for it. Throw those into the chat and we can keep going with that. But we are going to pivot to a little bit of hockey at this particular time. Okay. Hey, wait, Q&A. Yeah, Connor, like I said, if you want to throw those in, we absolutely can. I am just going to pivot to hockey here real quick, but if you want to get your questions in, we can totally do that. Like I said, anything you want to talk about in the chat, throw them in there for those watching live. And anything you want to talk about for those watching this after, put them in the comments and we can have a good old-fashioned chat in that way. But just quickly back to the world of the NHL. 2 other signings caught my attention here, as Dmitry Orlov is going to the San Jose Sharks. It's a 2-year deal worth $6.5 million a year. And I think this makes a lot of sense on both sides. You have the Sharks, who aren't a good hockey team, do not have very many good hockey players, and Dmitry Orlov is a good hockey player. So, fits a need of talented hockey humans. Cool. Orlov had a pretty rough playoff, especially an end to the playoff, where the Panthers just kind of dummied this poor guy. And so this gives him a chance to get it right in a less pressured environment. He still gets paid, and now he has a chance to kind of course correct here. For the Sharks, like I said, it's another good player, and with it being an extra year on the contract, you're not in a rush to try to trade him in any kind of a rebuilding move. But if it seems like that value is there, then absolutely all of a sudden an extra year and a half lets you push this thing into getting some real value at the trade deadline. So I just think it's a smart move all around for the San Jose Sharks and for Dmitry Orlov. Another defenseman signing with Brent Burns signing a 1-year deal with the Colorado Avalanche. It is a 1-year contract at $1 million. Obviously some bonuses and stuff can be thrown in, but I think it's a good signing for them. He's obviously not one of their top 4 defensemen, so you are not paying your number 5 defenseman in a way that is detrimental to the salary cap, but he can also step in and be that top 4 if someone gets hurt. So it's great value. It is a great depth signing, and it gives you some flexibility. If this team wants to go out and make another home run type of a swing, whether it be Crosby or something else with the Flames or anything like that, you can now move Manson or Girard and still feel like Burns can be acceptable in your top 4. So I think it is a really good move by the Avalanche to mix and match on their blue line and just add some like championship level depth. This is the type of thing that winning organizations do, and it is good for Burns to get into a winning organization. So some excellent work from Burns and from the Avalanche to really make this whole thing start to click. So just had a couple other hockey notes that wanted to get to, but I think the Burns signing and the Orlov signing are both very smart additions here for the Sharks and for the Avalanche for obviously 2 different reasons. It does put a lot of pressure now on the market because there is not much left on the defensive side of things. And so all of a sudden this Rasmus Andersson potential trade becomes more and more intriguing for some of these teams that need some options around the league. So I think there is a lot that kind of falls off of these dominoes as kind of the last few big pieces get plucked off of the free agent boards. Connor D in the chat was asking about a Q&A. By all means, ask all the Qs that you want, and I will give as many As as I possibly can. Even if it's not about what we're talking about right now, I got the chat right beside me here, so I can see what we are asking, and do not mind going off topic to get into anything that you guys want to discuss in the chat. We do these live multiple times a week here on Couch Potato Diary, and for people on Twitch, I understand it's getting a little bit wonky, but Twitch and Kick as well. We are doing these over there. And if you miss anything from this, it is available in podcast form over on Apple Podcasts as well as Spotify or wherever you get your pods. Just search Couch Potato Diary. So yes, if you have any kind of a question about anything sports related, or I guess otherwise, someone asked me what I ate the other day, get them in the chat. We can gladly go through all of those. We are going to move now, as Deeds brought it up in the chat. Yeah, the Blue Jays on fire. But how about those Calgary Stampeders as they picked up a huge win? We're going to get to that in a second, but Connor asking a question in the chat. San Jose needed to spend $20 million to get to the cap floor. What would be the funniest way for them to reach it? Sign Boma for 20 by 1. I have always kind of wondered if it like team, okay, we need to get to the cap floor. Hey, Sam Bennett, like, yeah, you're going to get like a big deal with Florida here in a second. You want to come to this place for like 15? You know, like just 1 year. I would love to see contracts like that. You know, because you see that sometimes in the NBA. Not necessarily like, oh, we have to get to the cap floor, but it's like, we have salary cap room this year, and the way contracts are structured in basketball, we may not get to this again for a very long time. So that guy over there, 3 by 45. Should we be giving that to Duncan Robinson? Probably not, but you bring it on. What would be the funniest way to go about kind of reaching the cap floor? I think, honestly, we've seen teams kind of do this, but make a trade with the Vegas Golden Knights for Alex Pietrangelo. You know, like Arizona did this for a little bit. Like their at the time cap-friendly page was hilarious because they would have this just dog shit roster, and you would go down the list. Okay, whatever. And then in LTIR, it's Pronger and Datsuk and like Shea Weber, or whatever the Shea Weber version is there. Like, you know, like you would have these guys who have never played a second with the Arizona Coyotes, will never play a second with the Arizona Coyotes. And so, whatever. But they're just like, yeah, we can take all that on. We don't care. We'll do that, put it on our thing, and then you guys can retain whatever you need and do all those other things. That was a weird time. So I think it would be funny if they did that again with the Pietrangelo, I guess, news that he's probably not going to be playing again. Thinking of a free agent who it would be really funny if they went off and signed. Oh, shoot. Who was it? There was a guy who just signed in Europe that I thought would be an interesting one, but it was early in the offseason, so I was like, oh man, you don't think anything is coming for you. I forget who it was, but that would be the move for me. It's just all of a sudden you just start plucking guys from Stockholm for like $4 million. Like pay these guys like Evander Kane level contracts to bring them in and just be like, yeah, whatever. We just needed to do that. I think that would be a pretty good one. God, who are like some older guys who are available? Like the Ben one, Jamie Benn would have been a pretty fun way to go about that too. Just like, yeah, you're not doing anything. Let's sign you and bring him on. Jonathan Taves, kind of the same thing, but he signs an actual real life NHL contract. So I suppose that is probably the way to go about it. Another one that you could trade for is Carey Price. He is still on LTIR for one more year with the Habs. So I think it would be funny to trade for a guy who people are complaining about not getting into the Hall of Fame. And you're like, yeah, added him to the roster. Big move for us. Big move for us. Those types of things would be kind of funny. But yeah, I think there are always some weird ways about the salary cap and everything like that. So hopefully we see teams get a little bit creative and very hilarious with different things at different times, because that would be fun. The other ones are the conditions on contracts, right? Like I remember one time there was a trade made, and it was this guy for a conditional 7th, and people who I was working with at the time messaged someone involved and like, what are the conditions on a 7th? It was like, if he scores the game-winning goal in the Stanley Cup final, we'll give them and it was like 2045 7th round pick, or something like that. Like it was not going to turn into anything, but it was just we need something else on paper so it doesn't look like we just sold a guy. So we just need to put that on there. I always love those sorts of weird nuance sorts of things. So yeah. Keep the chats coming over on YouTube, Twitch, or on Kick. But we are going to pivot to the CFL because the Calgary Stampeders made a statement on Thursday night, the Stampede Bowl. So we'll talk about that and get ready for the rest of the weekend in Canadian football. The CFL week is here. We are into week 5 already. I will say, not a strong start for the best bets column because I underestimated the Stampeders in a couple of different ways, but there is still a play tonight with Hamilton taking on Toronto, so if you want to catch that, check out my work over at 3 Down Nation. But I do want to start with what we saw last night. Not a full in-depth breakdown, we'll do the weekly recap on Monday, but holy hell. The Calgary Stampeders, that is a statement that Vernon Adams and company went out and made. A huge hat tip to them for what they were able to put out there. That was a performance that I didn't think you could do for them against Winnipeg. I thought, okay, it's cute. You got to do this against Hamilton and Toronto, and it's the rain against Ottawa, but whatever. Like, okay, that's nice. But Winnipeg is a real legitimate team. And the Stamps whooped that ass. So that was a eye-opening victory for the Calgary Stampeders. And I think that was an announcement like, hey, we are for real. And we are not just the team from last year that couldn't get its shit together. This is a real, genuine threat and genuine contender in the CFL's West Division. And I am, as a writer person, much less comfortable about them facing Calgary next week when those two teams play out in Saskatchewan. Because, oh my God. But it's an interesting test now for both sides. As you could argue, Saskatchewan hasn't really been tested, given whatever that was BC was trying to do last week. And now Calgary, that's one good test, but we have seen this Saskatchewan team have looked pretty good at times. So another big test for them coming up. Interesting one coming up tonight, as it is Hamilton taking on Toronto in another installment of their Battle of Alberta at BMO. This is, I think, actually a very interesting matchup because you have two teams coming off of wins that you can't really take seriously. Toronto, it was Ottawa, it wasn't Drew Brown, and it was a game where you got two returns of over 100 yards to help you get 14 points in that game. And Hamilton beat Montreal, but they beat Montreal with McLeod Bethel Thompson in at quarterback. So I have a difficult time taking that seriously. And they are actually two pretty evenly matched teams. As going through it for the best bets this week, both teams are in the bottom half of the league in net offense allowed. So, okay, offenses are going to thrive, except neither offense is all that good, as they are both in the bottom half of the league in net offense. Both teams, bottom half of the league in rushing yards allowed. But again, neither team looks ready to take advantage of that, because both teams sit last and second last in rushing yards per game. I do think there is a little bit of noise in that number because neither team really runs it at all. They have fewer rushing attempts combined than the Riders alone have this season. So it's not that they can't, it's just that they don't. So we will see. I think it's a fun matchup. I think these two teams are pretty evenly matched. I just kind of feel like Hamilton is better. I trust the quarterback significantly more in this matchup. So I am going to go with the Hamilton Tiger Cats in this one. Again, for more breakdowns of the CFL, you can head over to my work over on 3 Down. And you can support Couch Potato Diary with our tip jar. It is in the link of the YouTube descriptions and in the podcast as well. And on Twitch and on Kick, there is a panel for you to go over and check out. So, that would be, if nothing else, my cats need treats, man. So, help them get some treats. You can go over to the tip jar. But again, not expected, not required, none of that. Would just be a nice little way to help out. But you guys watching and chatting today has been so much fun. So, let's keep that going. I understand the CFL maybe isn't always the crowd pleaser, but still want to get a couple more of these in. BC taking on Montreal with all the injuries and changes everywhere. This is a tough team to get a read on in BC. And it's a tough matchup because on paper, I still think, given how BC has played, they should lose to Montreal. But that was really bad for McLeod Bethel-Thompson last week for the Alouettes against Hamilton. And I have concerns about them going up against a Nathan Rourke-led team out in BC. Now, I don't think that defense plays as bad 2 weeks in a row, but I think the changes at quarterback now and the injury situation kind of turning the Lions' way gives them the edge in this spot. So officially, when we had to do our picks, I did kind of change things on, it kind of changed my mind a little bit. We had to make our picks over at 3 Down before, so I officially went with Montreal. I'll just stick with it because we have to. We're going to be confident in McLeod Bethel-Thompson in week 2 of this offense that things will get rolling. And then the last matchup of the week sucks. It is Ottawa taking on Edmonton. Edmonton off to a bit of a slow start. The schedule has been tough. I do think we start to see some improvements here because they kind of have to. We are seeing now, like Saskatchewan is at least somewhat for real. And you have a Winnipeg team that looks quite for real aside from last night. BC, I still think we haven't seen the best of them. And now Calgary is looking dangerous. Edmonton cannot afford to fall much farther behind. So this is the easiest test they have had so far this season. This needs to be a time for them to take advantage of that. And I think they will. I think this is the time we actually start to see Edmonton break out of it a little bit and beat the Ottawa Red Blacks. So those are my CFL picks for the week in the Canadian Football League. Again, head over to 3 Down Nation for extensive 3 Down coverage in the CFL. We have Deeds talking about some NHL stuff in the chat. Frost signing for 2 on a show me contract was a great move, and Frost on the radio with Pat seems to know exactly what he needs to do. Hey, you know what? Let's we'll throw the graphic up in a second and talk a little bit more hockey. We got Connor back in the chat. What classic offensive play do you find most frustrating to watch in the CFL? Slot sweep, wide out hitch? Dude, you know what? Like, slot sweep, I can get it, whatever. The one that honestly frustrates me the most is and it can be effective at times. First down, handoff up the middle. The Riders do that more than any team ever. And it can work. But everything we have kind of learned about football, again, dirty word here, analytics, but is that it is easier to throw when the defense doesn't know if you're going to throw or pass. If it's 2nd and 8, they kind of have a clue you're going to be passing that ball, right? And so when you just do, hey, let's run this guy into the back of our offensive line and see what happens on first down, when you could be facing more neutral coverages in the passing game, it drives me up the wall sometimes when you only get 2 of these downs. And so when you do that, and then you make a successful pass on 2nd down, let's say, it's 2nd and 8, you make a pass for 5 yards. Now all of a sudden it's 3rd and 3, and then you punt. That progression annoys me. Because if you're going to accept that maybe we get 2 yards on first down, but we're going to try to do this play anyway because football tells us we have to, and then we get most of it back, I think you owe it to your offense to at least try something on third down to get that going. Wide receiver hitch, I am happy now that every team in the league seems to know, hey, let's just defend this appropriately, instead of, oh my god, that guy has stopped there and there's 2 people over here blocking. What could this be? Defenses have kind of figured that out, so that is one for me as well. But classic offensive play to watch in the CFL, it is the handoff up the middle. The biggest frustration I have with CFL play calling, if we want to get into this, and I was actually thinking about, I'm going to do something a little bit more on this when we get into more summer content. You have a huge field. They have to give you a yard. Why are teams punting on third and medium, or third and short, not even third and medium, third and 3 or 4? Why are we punting from like kind of plus territory, and especially late in games? This whole, oh man, so many, just leads can change all the time. So yeah, you know what? It makes sense in the CFL to punt the ball away with 2.5 minutes to go. And then the other team gets it. And then the commentators in the next breath are like, well, 1 first down and this game is over. That is not, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Give yourself a chance. It is a huge field. To have to defend everyone on it is very difficult to do. You should be able to pick up 3 or 4 yards with your game on the line. So there are so many passive decisions that get made in coaching all the time. And I just feel like teams should be much more aggressive about going for it in Canadian football when you have all that space and all that room. But everyone is just so conservative all the time, and it drives me up the wall. So apparently Connor has touched a nerve here a little bit with a couple of things in the CFL that I get very frustrated by. But Deed's mentioning the Frost signing up there, so let's talk about it. Let's do a little bit more on the NHL, and specifically here, the Calgary Flames. The Flames have not had the busiest of off seasons, but they do make a pretty good move in signing Morgan Frost to a 2-year extension. Deeds in the chat is saying, here, I don't know why my chat is being weird. Frost signing for 2 on a show me contract was a great move, and Frost on the radio with Pat, he seems to know exactly what he needs to do. I think that this is actually a very, very smart way of looking at it. And I'm not just sucking up to Deeds, because again, we celebrated Sweet 16 with 16 months as a Twitch subscriber. But I think with Morgan Frost, there is so much potential in this kid. Like, you see how he was able to get a little bit more flow going on the power play. That is a very tantalizing thing to have. And you see the offensive upside that he has, like just as a playmaker and everything. Like, you can really see where there is a true blue, legitimate number 2 center in there with this guy. It is just a matter of finding the consistency now in his game. And so that is why where the Flames are at right now is actually a pretty good spot for him. Let him be your second line center next year. Let him take some lumps, let him figure it out, let him adjust. Because he does seem like he is a pretty smart guy. And to Deeds' point, in every interview, he seems to know what he needs to work on. So even if he goes out and it looks like he is failing in October and November, it's very cliche, but I don't think it's failing. I think it's learning. And I think that it is good for him to have those adjustments, figure out where he fits in with this team and how to really kind of get going. I think there's a very, very good playmaker in there with Frost. I don't think he's ever going to be confused for a number 1 center. But I think as far as like playmaking centers go, this is a good one to have. And I think another big part of it too is he seemed to finally get somewhat of a chemistry going with Sharon Govich at the back part of that season. It was a bad year for Sharon Govich going into that extension. And there's obvious concern about that. But I think the chemistry that he and Frost developed at the end of the year, and they seem to fit really well together. I think that can be one of those pairings that we talk about in hockey that can really start to have this thing take hold and really start to push this thing into, okay, we have again a legitimate second scoring option here on this team. If you would consider like Coronado and whatever line he is on is kind of your first scoring option, and then whenever you do get a number 1 center, having that be it, and having Sharon Govich and Frost be your just lethal number 2 offensive weapon 1. So I think it is good to have that 2-year prove it type of a thing. There's still a little bit of pressure on him to make his improvements and grow, but you are rewarding him for still being a good hockey player, and you aren't just like beating this guy's confidence down or anything like that. So I think it is, again, a smart move on all sides. I thought it was a great trade when it happened. Need more from Farabee, but I think that this is a real opportunity here for this guy to find the potential that he had a while ago. That is the stream is going to continue, but that is going to do it for part one of the podcast today. So again, we are presented by Sea of Dead. If you like the Cannons hat, even if you're not in Calgary, I mean, it's just a cool baseball hat. So make sure you check out seaofdead403.ca. We got the Cannons hat right now, Stampede wrestling shirts, with it being the Calgary Stampede, a very important anniversary coming up in a couple of days, wrestling wise, in this city, as the the Canadian Stampede, was for WWF at the time, was 18 years ago. So why not celebrate with a Stampede Wrestling shirt? Also, if you need that energy, head over to swiftenergy.gg, use the code PK Prime Time. So again, for the live stream, we're going to continue here, but for podcast listeners, that is going to do it for part one, UFC, WWE, and AEW talk in part two, which begins on the stream right now. We saw a couple amazing performances at UFC 317 over the weekend. A lot of people saw their stocks rocket to the moon. So who's up and who's down in the Ultimate Fighting Championship after International Fight Week? Let's talk about it in our UFC Stock Report. The UFC is now done with International Fight Week, and coming out of it, a few stars have been born. So who's up, who's down in the UFC? Let's talk about it. Normally, we start on the positive side. I'm going to start on the down first. There's actually only a couple coming out of this event that I thought really had a significant drop. And, the first is Charles Oliveira. This felt like his last championship fight for me. This, honestly, it sounds harsh. This felt like the last bit of relevancy in the championship aspirations at 155 pounds for Charles Oliveira. All-time great fighter, someone who has put together a very, very good resume, but someone who just doesn't necessarily have it at this level anymore. There are still exciting fights for him. There are still a lot of wins out there in the UFC for Charles Oliveira. But in terms of actual legitimate title contention, I just don't see it for this guy anymore. And Renato Moicano is the other one. This was a real big setback, I think, against Beneil Dariush, coming off of a championship fight that, resume-wise, you certainly earned. But in terms of talent, you weren't on the level of Islam Makhachev. So this needed to be a statement of, hey, look, I am actually that dude. We can really put this thing together here and really make a bit of a march and get back to a championship opportunity. Instead, he gets outpointed by Beneil Dariush, who we have all kind of agreed is probably not going to be a championship contender in the UFC anymore. So to come off of a title fight and have that type of a loss happen to you, that is a very, very difficult way to see your stock kind of plummet, I guess. We're having some troubles over on Twitch today, but just a reminder that we do go live on twitch.tv/primetimepk. We got the video game streams. We've been, again, having a few technical issues, but in terms of live streams over on Twitch and on YouTube as well, our next live stream is going to be Monday at noon. Let's go now into the up category for the stock watch. Ilia Topuria is obviously the stock rises even more. We are now talking about pound for pound rankings with another brilliant showing. You have people already talking about, with what this kid has done this quickly into his UFC career, we could be talking about one of the all-time greats. When you have a brilliant showing that puts you into rarefied air like that, all of a sudden, yeah, doors open up and you end up on the up list on the stock watch. So the momentum needs to continue with him. We'll talk in a second about what fight should be next for him, but the sky is the limit now with Ilia Topuria. Alexandra Pantoja also gets the up arrow. It is a big win in a big spotlight, and now he has a fight that everyone is excited about coming up next with Joshua Van. So you finally have, like, this guy is finally getting the recognition of just being so much better than everyone in his division. And now you are getting a fight that people are excited about. This is how you start to build a star in the Ultimate Fighting Championship. And again, he is not the flyweight GOAT, but he is now the only other one in the conversation sitting at that table with the GOAT, Demetrius Johnson. And the last one is a combination. It is Josh Van and Brandon Royval. Both of them saw their stocks rocket up after Fight of the Year contenders. Van gets his title shot, and Royval, he gets to stay in the hunt, even in a defeat against a high-level prospect. When you have a fight like that, and then the guy you're fighting goes for a title, either you get probably first dibs if Van wins, although Pantoja probably deserves a immediate rematch if he were to lose, but you get pretty high up on the rankings if Van gets his opportunity and takes advantage of it, or if Van loses, you still get a really big fight against the guy who just fought for a championship. So either way, the stock is looking up for Royval, and for Van, he went from being exciting prospect to exciting challenger in one night. And that's a difficult thing to do. And only a few guys have been able to make that jump in one fight the way Josh Van was able to do. So that is the stock watch for the Ultimate Fighting Championship here on Couch Potato Diary. But what should be next? A couple of major stars were made out of UFC 317. So how should the promotion build on this? What should be next for some of the breakthrough fighters at UFC 317? Well, luckily, I'm here to tell the promotion what they need to do. These are the fights to make coming out of UFC 317. So UFC 317 was able to captivate the audience and really draw in the attention. Now it's time to take advantage of that. Now it's time to pivot and see what is next for these fighters who got all this attention. Let's start at the top. Ilia Topuria. This isn't the biggest name. And there is obviously a big name fight out there for him. And if they wanted to go the Paddy Pimblett route, okay. I could see it. If you just want to keep building a star, that is a very compelling way of doing that. And I would have a tough time arguing, quite frankly. If we are going on merit, and I still think that there are questions to be answered for Topuria, I think he answers a lot of them if it is Arman Tsarukyan going into it. And I think this one makes sense for a few different ways. One, like on the challenger side, Tsarukyan never got his title opportunity after winning a number one contenders fight. Now, Dana White suggesting that it was a weight cutting issue, not an illness/injury problem. But I still think he earned his championship fight, so he deserves that title opportunity. Plus, I think he presents a style challenge for Topuria that would answer a lot of questions for him at 155 pounds. I think that, like, you could go the Pimblett fight for Topuria next, and he could go out and just absolutely blast that dude, and we keep doing with the big thing, but then eventually he fights someone like Tsarukyan, and the wheels kind of come off a little bit. Maybe. I'm not saying they do, but I think this way you see really and truly what you have in Topuria at 155 pounds. And I think that is a good way to see, like, okay, is this guy for real against someone who is not going to fight the style that he needs them to fight? This is a puzzle he's going to have to figure out. Can he do that now? And look, if he does, then you obviously can just go full bore in building up this guy as your next GOAT. You can also have a very compelling conversation if you want to turn this guy into a star about, look, we never gave Conor matchups this tough on his rise, and he's passing us with flying colors. Like, I think there are a lot of different promotional ways that this would actually benefit the UFC in the long run. So what would be next for Paddy Pimblett? Well, why not the guy Topuria beat? It's not the championship, but it's close. I think that, like, a lot of people wanted Paddy maybe to get that title shot, and a lot of people assume that's what's next after that whole stare down thing. It's not like the UFC hasn't pivoted from that type of a situation before, and I think sober second thoughts will come in on this. Now, this is a little bit of hypocrisy from me, because I have been saying I want a real challenge for Paddy Pimblett and not just another aging veteran. And this looks more like an aging veteran. But I do still think that Oliveira is of a level that, like, if Ilia Topuria just decide, you know what, I actually like cheesecake, so 205 pounds for me. I think Oliveira is still at, like, that-ish level of the mountaintop and is at least someone that you need to beat to prove that you can compete for a championship at 155 pounds. So I think it gets Pimblett another big name fight. It gets him another opportunity to show what he can do, and a win in this one would all but certainly lock him up for a championship bout. And for Oliveira, we just said, I don't think he's a title challenger anymore, and I think his days of being a relevant player in the UFC's 155-pound division are done. Prove me wrong, and go out and beat the next hotness at 155 pounds. This next one is the easiest one we've ever done in this segment. It's Pantoja against Van. There's no question about it. Pantoja coming off of a dominant performance, Van coming off of a star-making month where he fought twice in 21 days, including a Fight of the Year contender. You do this. Even if Van loses, he is still going to get people viewing him as a title contender, and it is a shoot for the moon and you might end up in the stars sort of a thing. Like, even if he loses, he's still 24. He can figure out why he lost and still be a great challenger. We have passed the too much too soon part of the development for Van. Let's go right into going for a championship now and just see where he is at. Don't forget to, if you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. And also, if you want to know when we got videos coming up for Couch Potato Diary, hit the notification bell as well. All that stuff really does help this podcast grow. For the two guys who were in the fights against the dudes who we have going for the title next, why not? Let's just do full tournament style. This is the bronze medal fight of UFC 317. As Kai Kara France, I have him next against Brandon Royval. If this is boxing, you probably want to give, honestly, you want to give both of these guys probably, like, tune-up, stay busy fights. For KKF, you would want it to be a, let's just get this guy back on track sort of a thing. I think that would be that would be the way boxing would do it. It would be against the guy with a decent record, but not like a real whatever, just to get him back on track and let's build this challenger back up again. And for Royval, he's coming off of an epic fight of the night, or fight of the year, potentially. Let's give him a fight that just keeps the ball rolling a little bit, keeps his name out there, and then we'll see how the championship fight goes. But this isn't boxing. This is the UFC. And I think that these guys, they're on the same timeline, and the winner at least stays within striking distance of Josh Van if he were to win the championship. I don't think either of them's getting a hope of getting the belt if Pantoja wins, although Pantoja could be moving up if he gets that, because at that point we've kind of cleared things out. So either way, these guys stay hovering distance of a championship in the UFC, whoever picks up a win in that fight. Last couple here. Beneil Dariush, I have him against Rafael Fiziev. Fiziev coming off of a win last month as well, so they're both basically on the same timeline. He had lost 3 in a row at one point, Fiziev, and so this is a good chance for him to work his way back up and see where he really stands, because it's a couple of losses against Gaethje and one against Gamrot. The one last week against Bahamondes doesn't, I think, really establish anything. But this is a test. And it is one that Moicano did not pass. But this is a test to see, like, okay, yes, you've lost to a couple high-level fighters, but where are you really at? And Bahamondes, okay, we've at least passed that level. Now can you pass the Beneil Dariush one? So I think it makes sense. And then again, we're kind of doing winners against winners, losers against losers. I have Moicano against Ignacio Bahamondes. Back-to-back losses for Moicano after becoming #1 contender. That is not great. So I think that he has kind of moved to the back of the pack in terms of public interest and in terms of the UFC rankings right now. Bahamondes isn't in the rankings, but he's also coming off of a loss. And again, on the same timeline, I think it gives Moicano a chance to see, like, okay, how far has this fallen? Let's try to get you back on track here, get a win, and see where you're actually at in this division. And for Bahamondes, it's a chance to fight a guy who is challenged for a championship and really test yourself in that way. So I think it's an interesting bout and would be one that would make sense for both sides. A reminder that Couch Potato Diary, we're trying to grow here. So if you could help by sharing whatever you're consuming right now, whether it's the full episode where you're listening, or if you're watching this video, just hit that share button, send it out to a few people that you like, get in on the fight conversation, because we really want to grow Couch Potato Diary. Let's move now to the world of professional wrestling. The WWE has a lot to build up to, but NXT feels like it's actually doing it in a relatively effective way. Let's talk about what happened on WWE NXT this week. That is right. Living Room Lariats. Again, it is the new wrestling podcast from Couch Potato Diary that all the wrestling talk from Couch Potato Diary gets just balled up into one spot and gets sent over if you don't want to listen to all the UFC and CFL and NHL and MLB on Couch Potato. If you're just here for the wrestling talk, Living Room Lariat is the place for you to go. Hit that subscribe button. It's available wherever podcasts are available. There is all the stuff from Couch Potato, plus a couple things in podcast form you're not getting anywhere else. This NXT recap is going to be on there as they build toward Evolution and the Great American Bash. Jordan Grace and Blake Monroe standing tall. I thought that they had an interesting segment here with Fatal Influence to close the show. I like that we're kind of getting into that kind of a build. I like that we're trying to humanize Jordan Grace a little bit. I like that this was the main event kind of segment, really put that importance on this, and you're keeping Blake Monroe in the main event picture. So I think it was good. Fatal Influence, this has been an interesting kind of experiment with JC Jane as the NXT Women's Champion, but I don't think it is necessarily clicking. It is maybe raising the relevancy of this group a little bit, but I don't think that it has necessarily created a new main eventer out of anything, and I still think that JC Jane is a very quick champion, and Jordan Grace gets her kind of crowning achievement at Evolution. Maybe they do the Great American Bash, like they put them in a tag team match at Great American Bash, so maybe you get JC Jane to get the win there, and that puts some doubt into Jordan Grace going into the match at Evolution. There is a men's challenger as well, as Yoshiki Inamura is the new number one contender. It's just refreshing to see a number one contenders match in WWE have a conclusive finish after we all knew the direction Bayley against Lyra was going to be on Monday. So it was nice to see this, and just nice to not have that three-way for the NXT title. But we talked about it a bit. Inamura is an interesting fit in the main event picture for NXT on the men's side. He does need to build into that a little bit more, but there is something there. Jasper Troy on the losing end of it, he has the pieces, they're not together yet. I got a little too excited after his attack on Inamura last week and the stare down after the match that they had. I was like, hey, we might have something here. But he is close, he's not there yet. Nor should he be, for the record. Like, he is just fresh on television. So you put him in the main event so everyone views him as a main eventer, and now let's put him back down where he's actually supposed to be slotted. I just thought, like, the match, it was good, but the promo that he has where he's staring down at the camera and talking about how the monster and blah, 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 blah. It just became so obvious that he is not close to the same level as Obafemi is in that sort of a character right now. The big, mean, nasty guy. He is not that. And so again, Obafemi feels like he is main roster ready. This kid's not supposed to look main roster ready. He just came off of a reality show an hour ago. So I feel like there are the pieces there with Jasper Troy. It is too soon for him in this sort of a way. One thing I don't love is what's going on with Wes Lee right now. They turned him heel, and it has just been miss after miss after miss after miss after miss. And like, you have a guy who was red hot, and then he comes back from injury, and it felt like there was a ready-made opportunity to put him as like the babyface on this show, and instead they go with him at the heel route, and instead of being like a huge favorite as a babyface, he is just one of the faces as a heel, and that's not a good place for him to be. He is feeling very second fiddle in this championship feud for the TNA title on NXT with Trick Williams and Joe Hendry. Not a great sign. So I am hoping that this whole mini partnership that they have with Wes Lee and with Trick Williams, that it is going to lead to Trick turning on Wes and this turning Wes back babyface, because that is where he is so much more effective on the NXT roster. Continue to get a pretty good build, though, out of this with Joe Hendry against Trick, building up pretty well, and having Slammiversary be hyped up on WWE TV is still amazing to me. We get some advancement now in the Tony D, Stax, Luca Crucifino story. I was not expecting Luca to kind of turn and go on his own. I did think that there was going to be like one side or the other that he was going to pick, and I don't mind this. If they all go their separate paths, you can have Tony go up to the main roster and still do the Italian mob gimmick, and it's not weird when you are having another version of that down on NXT that you're not going to call up and bring with him. Because they just had this blood feud on TV. So I do think that it makes sense for them all to go kind of their separate ways, for Luca and for Stacks to maybe have their own characters. If you want Stacks to be the Dawn of a new group or whatever, that's fine. But I think that this makes some sense for how you want to present this story. So I was actually happy with the progression that they made here and interested to see what is next in this feud. And then we also get some Sol Ruca, Zarya, Izzy Dame, and Tatum Paxley advancement here. And again, I like how this one is kind of progressing as well. I think that it makes sense for Izzy Dame's character to be leading Tatum Paxley along. And I also think that it makes sense for the Culling to be a faction that would break up a group like Sol Ruca and Zarya and come between these two who friendship we have seen blossom so long, even though I do think that it is kind of against everything that made Zarya unique and is kind of holding her back a little bit. I think that a split here would really do Sol Ruca and Zarya well. And so I think that there is a lot that you can go with here. I think that advances those two. And I think also another heartbreak and turning on Tatum Paxley is a smart way to go about things as well. So I do think that there is a lot to like about what is happening with NXT at this particular time, especially those ones. Again, some things I don't love, but there's a lot of good happening on NXT as we build toward what is a busy weekend next weekend. And again, we are going to do it all on Living Room Lariat. There is a new wrestling podcast from Couch Potato Diary. Living Room Lariat is going to have all the great wrestling content from Couch Potato Diary with some exclusive breakdowns not available on the flagship podcast. So search out Living Room Lariat wherever you get your podcast. One more stop on the wrestling train, and that is in AEW. We are now in the final stages of the build towards All In, and AEW has hit this perfectly. Let's recap what we saw on AEW Dynamite on Wednesday. So AEW is building up toward All In, and they're doing a masterful job, man. I think that this show has refound its momentum from a while ago. Are we at the peak of when CM Punk came in and all of that? We are not. But this is about as entertaining and about as interested in this show I have been in a very long time. So a huge credit to the crew at AEW for turning this thing around. We got a heck of a main event with Okada against Ibushi. I thought they turned back the clock in this one. It is not what it was G1 final all those years ago when Ibushi got hurt, but this is still a very good main event and really does show what these two can do when they are motivated performers. I think that this is a great showing from both of them. And Okada, he needed the win. He is going toward this big match against Kenny Omega at All In. But Ibushi, I think, could be more of a mainstay here. We have seen with consistent work, he tends to get hurt a lot. But I think there is a way that you could do it with him and still keep it fresh, still keep it exciting. And I think coming out of this, we'll see whether it's Okada or Omega who come away from All In with the Unified Championship, which I still hate the name of. But I think that there is one last tag run here in Omega and Ibushi. And I wonder now if they could be the ones to get the tag team titles back from the Hurt Business. You can tell I'm recording this during Stampede because I don't know if you guys could pick up that jet flyover, but I did. Quite loud out there. But I think you got the Hurt Business really being dicks about things. I think that this would be a very good kind of babyface group to win the titles back and vanquish the bullies at the top of the tag team division in AEW. Hangman and Moxley get the Texas Deathmatch stipulation. I thought they set it up really effectively. This whole thing has been about Moxley not believing that Hangman can win the big one and that Hangman can be the guy in AEW and isn't worthy of being the guy in AEW. So he says, you want Texas Death now against me? You can't handle that. No, you don't deserve that type of an opportunity. It's not going to happen. And so then Hangman proving that he has that last little bit of killer instinct in him by going out and hitting the buckshot on Marina Shafir, I thought was really interesting. Now, I am not the biggest fan of the intergender stuff in professional wrestling, but they have been setting this up for a long time, and they maximized it perfectly. It wasn't just violence for the sake of violence. There was a story to it. There was a setup to it, and it was executed perfectly to set up your biggest main event in a very long time. So I think they did an excellent job with this whole thing. The whole setup, telling the story of Hangman Page, not necessarily fully believing that he could be the one, is excellent. And I think this is where you need to really invest in your video crew. I would run it on Wednesday, but I think you need a real video detailing the whole rise of Hangman through AEW to this crescendo of him becoming the guy at this company, starting in losing the first AEW world title match, and then turning into the tag team champions, and then the whole drinking storyline, and the pressures of maybe being the guy, maybe not being the guy, and what was supposed to be on his shoulders, and turning to the dark side, and now trying to find that light with the fans behind him as the champion. Like, there is an amazing story that you can tell with this, and I just hope that they have hit it out of the park here, but I think that this is one, I know they don't do a ton of videos on their TV, this is one where I think you need to do the video of as the go-home thing on Dynamite on Wednesday, and then have it everywhere on social media to get people invested in this pay-per-view. And I think the stipulation adds a little bit extra to it as well. Mercedes Moné against Mina Shirakawa. They got a chance to shine for the TBS title. I thought the match was very strong between these two. Mina getting a bit of the spotlight is good. I need more focus on her now coming out of All In. I think that they obviously have an amazing performer now in Mina Shirakawa full-time, so let's utilize that. I thought it was a good shift from Timeless Toni Storm as well, where she isn't just the braggadocious and talking about tits and everything like that while eating her steak at the table. She's just focused the whole time on that match and stoic. I thought that set up the seriousness of this well. They had their fun early on, but they have now hit another gear with this feud, and they've done a great job with it. MJF gets the spot in the Casino Gauntlet in the number 2. This was a good match. I was hoping that MJF would have a little bit more, but I do think adding him to this match makes it feel like a big deal. And they've set some stuff up with him and Mark Briscoe, and it makes it feel like it is a singles match, but now with the gauntlet, that is one of your best gimmicks attached to it. So I can see where it makes some sense. This match was great as well, and holy hell do they have something in Brody King, and he is another one that post All In. Like, I want this guy close to the title picture for All In next year, whenever that is. But for the biggest show of the year, this guy needs to be on it in a big time way next season. After MJF wins, you have Jet Speed come out and attack the Hurt Business, and the Hurt Business beat the piss out of these guys, and it's just beat down, and then they leave, and hey, we're still standing, and they come back, whatever. And I get trying to do the old Jeff Hardy Undertaker thing after that ladder match that they had on Canada Day, actually, a long time ago. I don't love the way to build this up as a title threat. Now, if these are the guys you're going to put in your tag team main event, or your tag team title match, this is probably the way to do it. Like, you're not going to have these guys actually beat Lashley and Shelton Benjamin on TV to build up to this, or have them feel like the dominant ones. This is going to be about, like, oh my God, can they actually put these guys away? So I guess that there is a bit of a story to tell with this, but I don't think it's working, because the crowd, as this was happening, instead of trying to get behind Knight and Bailey, it was the crowd chanting, "We hurt people." Not a great sign for your baby faces in this spot. But that being said, they're going to get, I don't think you change the titles here in this spot. I don't think this is the team that you give that to with the Hurt Business. So I would suggest, though, that they're probably going to get one hope spot here at All In that we're all going to bite on. So I'm criticizing it, but it's probably going to work in the ways that they want it to. That Superman tag team match just stole the show, with Young Bucks and Takeshita taking on Kyle O'Reilly, Roderick Strong, and Bandito. Unbelievable match. Just a phenomenal match. It is the type of a brilliant match that you expect from AEW on their 300th show, and it delivered in a big time way. It was a great showcase for Bandito. I think he is ready for more than just being the Ring of Honor champion. I think there needs to be now a progression, and I think that would help Ring of Honor as well, because they are a brand right now that everyone just assumes as a overflow for AEW. But I think if you can establish, hey, this guy was the Ring of Honor champion. He has lost that, but now he's called up to AEW and he is into somewhat of a title picture of some sort and being treated as a main eventer. Now all of a sudden you're kind of training people to take Ring of Honor a little bit more seriously. And so I think there needs to be a progression now for him a little bit. I also think there's a very interesting story that's going to come out of everything here with the Young Bucks, Takeshita, and Okada, because obviously Takeshita and Okada are not on the same page. And now Okada is off with the Don Callis family, but then you have the Bucks now teaming up with Takeshita as a bit of a, And so I think there's a shot there, but I also think it's a Takeshita being like, I got you boys. So I think there's an interesting story here. And then you get the setup for the match at All In with Swerve and Ospreay taking on the Young Bucks. And they set up the stipulations. So if you didn't watch, it is if Swerve and Ospreay win, then the Bucks are no longer EVPs. It is not that Swerve and Ospreay get to be EVPs. It's just no one is. If the Bucks win, Swerve and Ospreay don't get a title shot for a year. They set these up in a way that both are big enough that there are real stakes for this match, but believable enough that either of them could happen. I think if you went over the top and you were like, you know what? If the Bucks lose, Swerve and Ospreay are EVPs. No one is buying that those two are going to be EVPs at all, right? So, okay, whatever. But if you go the other way and you say if the Bucks win, Swerve and Ospreay are never getting your title shots again. Well, that is kind of what they tried with Cody and it didn't work. And it is too big of a thing for any of us to believe. So when you have stipulations like this, you run the risk of it becoming very predictable because we can see, well, that's not going to happen. But both of these are just big enough that it's important, but not too big that it's like, well, that's not going to happen. And they're both interesting again, overused term, but interesting storytelling devices coming off of it that I think it's really, really fascinating. So I think that there is a lot of interesting things going on here with All In, and the match is going to be insane. But like I said off the top, this was a really good Dynamite, and the best place AEW has been creatively in a very, very long time. All the stakes that were set up on Wednesday were believable for the characters. They were intense enough that it draws more interest in, and every progression in the matches that we saw, maybe with the exception of the tag team one, but every progression that we saw was a logical progression, and it was one that adds more intrigue. And I think when you look at, because this has been a long build for this now. We have known about All In for a while, especially with Omega Okada, and with the Owen happening at Double or Nothing leading up to this has been a long build to All In, and they have nailed it beat by beat by beat in a perfect way. And I think when you compare it to WWE having all that time to build to WrestleMania and them having some lulls, and maybe we got a little bit high at the end, but not necessarily all the way, I think that this is one of the few times in the last little bit that you can say that AEW has kind of got one over now on WWE creatively, because they're in a very, very good place right now. All right, that is going to do it for the show. Again, check out cofdead403.ca for that great Calgary swag, and get your gaming fuel over at Swift Energy. Go to swiftenergy.gg, use that code PKPrimetime for the 25% off. If you are watching on YouTube or Dailymotion later, make sure you hit that subscribe or follow button, like the video, share it with some people that you know. If you are listening, rate, review, and subscribe. Some platforms have different methods for those. Whatever one allows you to tell your podcast app that you like this show, please do that. Those things help the growth of the podcasts out immeasurably. So thank you guys so much for hanging out today. Follow me on social media. I am at Primetime Klein on X, Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, and TikTok. Our next stream is going to be Monday. So have a great, for our American viewers, have a great long weekend. For everyone, have a great weekend, and we will chat again on Monday. Bye-bye.